So, we are responding to a conversation that we had just yesterday, going over the Montreal Canadiens and a name that they have been officially linked to, courtesy of our amazing friend, Nick Kypreos. Yeah, it's always Kipper going out there and dropping the biggest and most extreme scoops, but yesterday's video went out there and talked about how the Montreal Canadiens and the Pittsburgh Penguins are reportedly in on Vegas Golden Knights D-man Nic Hague in some sort of a bidding war against each other for the services of this VGK shutdown man. Now, we did talk about the Pittsburgh angle, we had spoken about the Canadiens' perspective about it too. One thing that I learned after this commentary was made was the fact that Nic Hague can actually play on the right side. Even though he is a left-handed D-man, he has that versatility to suit up on both the left and the right, which bodes well for the Montreal Canadiens when you think about how, yes, they have enough guys already on the left side between Struble, Xhekaj, Guhle, Hudson, Matheson, but on the right side there is particularly a hole being left by the departure of David Savard. Reinbacher is an option, Carrier is going to be there, Mailloux is also an option too, so there are a number of guys that you can say could be right-side D-men on the Habs. Nic Hague, if you wanted to think about the one-to-one sort of stylistic replacement, he could very well be a David Savard replacement if you were to project him as a right-side guy. With all this in mind, though, I wanted to reopen the conversation about Hague and the Habs because we had some further responses given out by one Marc-Olivier Baudouin that I thought were really interesting to go out there and reference. So this tweet was made yesterday after the Hague video that we had made was published. It's in French, so I'm just gonna read this in English here. Olivier Baudouin goes out there and talks about how the Canadiens would be interested in acquiring Hague, who is a huge 6'6", 240-pound, 26-year-old defensive D-man who is left-handed but can play on the right. He is going to be an RFA on July 1st. He then expanded on this idea, saying this: I think a Jayden Struble plus second or third round pick for Nic Hague trade would make a lot of sense for both clubs. Hague is an RFA up for re-signing and he will want a raise. Vegas can't afford that. Struble can be qualified for less than $1 million, and he can act as Vegas's sixth defenseman. The Canadiens will improve their defensive brigade and makes it bigger and doesn't give anything that really hurts considering the plethora of draft picks that they have. What do you think? Now, this goes hand in hand with what we had spoken about yesterday. How for the Vegas Golden Knights, they wouldn't really be trading away Nic Hague because they think, oh, if we trade Hague for Struble, for example, Struble is a better player than Hague, so our team will be better. No, that's not the philosophy here. They're not making this trade to improve their team. They're making this trade because they just won't be able to afford what Nic Hague is asking for. And as an RFA, it's not like he can walk straight up to unrestricted free agency. There is a little bit of control that Vegas has in this situation. So why not try to go out there and maximize whatever potential value you get out of this guy by putting him on the market and letting a team like Montreal bite on his profile? They can pay him some extra money. The Habs can give Vegas a serviceable sixth defenseman that isn't going to be breaking the bank like a Nic Hague would be, and everybody is happy. Sure, the Golden Knights would need to acquire some extra assets to make a trade worth it. You're not trading Struble for Hague 1-for-1, but if it's Struble plus a second-round pick or a third or something, hell, if you wanted to really twist my arm and say even both a second or a third, or Struble and 2/3, I honestly start to think that's a lot more fair. Run a D-core with, let's say, you put Hudson and Hague on the right side. You can have Guhle Hudson, Matheson Carrier, and then you can have Xhekaj with Nic Hague. Sure, having 5 left-handed guys isn't necessarily ideal, but if they can play on the right, it's a lot easier to manage. This is, of course, where you start to wonder whether or not a Mailloux or a Reinbacher could start to become an NHL option in the next little while. It's not guaranteed, so when you think about the assets the Canadiens do have in their roster, this is where you start to say, okay, Nic Hague would be a guaranteed guy. He would be able to get, let's say, 15 to 20 points on a season as a shutdown D-man who can play on the right. He logs minutes, he can play defensively, he can play PK. There's a lot of value that he brings. He's like almost discount Shea Weber, except he's left-handed and he doesn't have the big booming slap shot that Weber once had and was known for. Just stylistically, you think of the Sherratts, the Webers, the Joel Edmondsons, the guys cut from that mold that had made their presences known in Montreal the past few years. There's a reason why Nic Hague is being touted here. He could very well follow up in that same mold. If it is Jayden Struble and a second and a third, going back the other way to Vegas, I actually do think they can do wonders with that kind of a package. We've seen what the Vegas Golden Knights can do with the system that they play. They turn the most mid and average D-men into actually serviceable NHL caliber guys. Just look at Ben Hutton. That guy was nothing towards the end of his Vancouver Canucks career, and inevitably, he became a Stanley Cup champion with the Vegas Golden Knights. I get it, coaching staff changes, personnel changes, whatever, but something about this gosh darn team just allows them to be able to bring the best out of whomever it is suiting up on that blue line. Nic Hague, I think, of course, he's a lot better than some of these players, but for Jayden Struble, a guy who already was serviceable enough for the Montreal Canadiens, I'm kind of thinking, with a little bit more development and playing in a much more tight and disciplined system like Vegas, I wonder if Jayden Struble could gather up some more offensive capabilities and be a full 82-game guy in the upcoming season. Who really knows? The Vegas Golden Knights certainly have had worse players, I think, suit up on their blue line the past 12 months, so Struble would be a really interesting fit there. Not the best. Of course, he's not as good as Hague, you would probably say, but he still is valuable. And for the Montreal Canadiens, if he is the trade chip that ends up being dangled to get a guy like Nic Hague, then I'm actually for it. If the Habs can make a trade for Hague without sacrificing Reinbacher or Mailloux, if it's just Struble and some picks, I think you really have to start thinking about it if you're Kent Hughes. Now, this does not diminish the other question that I had from yesterday's video commentary, and that thought still percolates throughout my mind here. I'm kind of wondering, if it is just Struble and a second, or a second and a third, something like that, do the Pittsburgh Penguins have it in them to outbid Montreal? If the Golden Knights are thinking about it like, okay, yeah, this is the package from Montreal and Kent Hughes, let's see what Pittsburgh offers. If the Golden Knights tell Kyle Dubas, hey, they're giving us Struble and a second and a third, can you outbid them? Who knows if Dubas is like, yeah, okay, great, we'll give you this defenseman and 2 seconds or something like that. Is there a possibility that Pittsburgh pays a little bit more than what it is Baudouin is suggesting Montreal offer up in this Nic Hague negotiation? That is the secondary question here. Will the Habs continue to hold the highest bid if that is the package? Will they be forced to go into first-round pick territory with the compensation if Pittsburgh decides to try to match? And for Vegas, do you think that a Struble plus a second and a third type package is already enough for them to say, yeah, sure, that's a great deal, let's go ahead and make this move? I can understand if you're thinking, okay, maybe it's a little bit too little. Maybe the Golden Knights can try to stretch it out a little bit more. Maybe the Golden Knights will use these other teams like Pittsburgh to try to get Montreal to bid a little extra. This is how negotiations work. We'll end up seeing whether or not this goes through for Montreal or any other team over the next few weeks here, right up until the summer, July 1st, when Nic Hague is going to be in the next stage of his NHL contract timeline. So with all this in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about Nic Hague as a potential Montreal Canadien, and do you think a trade price of a second and a third and Jayden Struble is enough to grab him onto the Habs? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.